Welcome to the Biz Coach Show, brought to you by My Biz Coaches. Our show is focused on giving entrepreneurs the edge they need to succeed. Learn more at mybizcoaches.com. Our guest today is Andrew Melendrez, partner with Now Capital Partners, a full-service investment bank specializing in growth capital, mergers and acquisitions, debt, and long-term capital attainment. Andrew is a certified M&A professional, and prior to joining Now Capital Partners, he was the co-founder of Quality Sleep Solutions, where he was able to expand the company rapidly over 14 years, primarily through M&A, to include 23 locations across 4 states and eventually sold in 2019. Learn more at nowcapitalpartners.com. Well, Andrew, it is great to have you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm really excited to be here and share my story with you guys and, learn a little bit more about what you guys are doing. And yeah, it's just going to be amazing. I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're very excited to have you. And I know we have a lot of good topics in store for the audience today, and can't wait to get into it. So again, welcome to the show. And Eric, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent, David. Appreciate you asking. Always good to see you.
Yep, always a pleasure. Well, hey, before we dive into kind of our topics and everything that we've got in store, Andrew, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your journey. Do you mind sharing that with our audience?
Sure, absolutely. So how I got started in M&A is kind of a fascinating story. So what I did is I was a founder of a company called Quality Sleep Solutions, and we treated people for sleep apnea and insomnia. You probably heard of like a CPAP machine, right? So I first started off in consulting for different hospitals, and then I grew from that success and opened up one location in the Albuquerque, Rio Rancho area, and then used M&A in order to grow my business. And so what I was doing is I was acquiring different physician-owned sleep centers, and I grew from one location to 23 locations in Colorado, Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Texas. And here in New Mexico, I had the largest network of sleep centers here. And then in 2019, I sold that business to a doctor down in El Paso. A lot of those facilities are still up and running, but now I transitioned over into M&A advisory and being an investment banker. And so now essentially what I do is I get to have the fun job of helping people exit their businesses. I help them raise capital. I work with a bunch of different entrepreneurs in a lot of different sectors. Although healthcare is my background, I've had experience in e-commerce and transportation and construction, along with a lot of different healthcare deals as well. So that's a little bit about my journey and how I became an M&A advisor.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. And you could tell from the tone of your voice, you love what you do, which is awesome. So very cool. And love the passion that you have for it. That's amazing.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. And it's funny, David, as he was going through some of the things he did, I'm like, man, our paths should have crossed a few years ago.
Exactly. Well, I think it's amazing because people will come to me and they've built a business, for example, for like 20 years, 30 years. And I just have the honor of, helping them across the finish line. And it can be, it's an amazing and rewarding work that I do. And I think probably one of the best things about this job is the clientele. I'm working directly with creative entrepreneurs, with really gritty, edgy people that have risked a lot to be successful. And that's, I think, the most amazing thing about my work is the clientele.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. Those are great words too, by the way. I can respect that immensely. When I first started my journey as a business coach 4 years ago, one of the things, when I first got into it, I was going to be a consultant, and it was just going to be the way that I wrote out my last 10 years, my last little episode, right, for lack of a better term. And as I got deeper into this and I saw the challenge and the frustration that business owners were going through, and ironically, my path began 5 months before COVID. And then it was just, right. And so for a year and a half, my first 2 years in the business, a year and a half of it was the COVID escapade, if you want to call it that. And I watched so many small business owners just get kicked in the teeth after running their business 5, 10, 15, 20 years in some cases, and just trying to muscle their way through it. And I became very compassionate about their circumstance, having been in that space myself personally over the years in different scenarios. And I just felt like, man, that I know I can help these people. And it's funny because you're approaching it from the same perspective. I recognized that the longer I got into this, the more I was really passionate about this mission of helping business owners get through their challenges so they can actually see the fulfillment of their dream in their business.
Yeah, because a lot of times you're right. They're focused on operations, right? They're focused on the next sale. They're focused on their people. They're focused on getting payroll completed on Friday, right? And making sure they got enough cash in the bank to cover it. And they're not worried about the outside world and the market that's going on around them, or maybe what's going on in Washington, D.C., or even in their own legislature. They're head down. And a lot of times that can create a opportunity for us, because they don't know the information and what it takes to actually exit a business. And there's a lot of pitfalls that are out there that they can avoid if they've had the proper training, if they've had the proper education, if they've had a great, consultant or mentor and advisor that's done it multiple times and has, been through it, on many occasions in many different sectors. We can avoid a lot of the pitfalls that are out there that they could get into and really increase the value of their company, because that's kind of the idea, is that there's certain things that you can do to your business in order to be incredibly valuable to buyers. But a lot of times those types of changes or those types of adjustments that you need to make to your business, those take time. Those can take, a year to 2 years to try to correct. Because if you just come to me and you're like, hey, I want to sell my business tomorrow, but you have these issues, a lot of times there's not going to be enough time to fix those, or at least during a transaction, that's probably not the appropriate time to be doing that.
Right. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Eric, you mentioned you wish that you had met Andrew earlier. Maybe just tell us for a minute about kind of how you crossed paths and how you guys first got connected.
Actually, that's a good question. How did we get connected, Andrew? No, I forgot.
We got connected on LinkedIn. So I shot you a message.
Right.
Yeah, and we were connected there. I always do a lot of outreach on LinkedIn. I think it's a great platform. So a lot of times people are talking to me and sending referrals, and some people on LinkedIn use it correctly, and they meet up and they network. And I pass, a lot of business just around the country on LinkedIn. So I love, a giver's gain attitude of, hey, let me understand more about what it is that you're trying to do, and let me connect you with some people. Let me send some referrals to you. And then, on many occasions, my phone will ring and they'll say, hey, I know this business that wants to sell, or, I know this person that's trying to raise some capital. Or in some situations, it's like you mentioned with COVID, it's like a distress situation. And hey, do you have resources for this? This person's, maybe considering filing bankruptcy. Who do you know? And so a lot of times I use LinkedIn to connect with great people like yourself in order to broaden my network, but honestly, to be a resource to my clients.
Yeah, it's great. And I will, when we first connected, I remember you mentioning that some of the different solutions that you offer. And I'm like, we need to touch base. And that's what led to that first conversation. And through that conversation, I was like, you got to be on our show, man. That's all
right. Yeah. Twist my arm. Yeah.
Exactly.
On these, I love talking with cool people and just learning more. I'm like, I was telling David, I'm a student. Like, I love learning from people. I definitely don't know everything. I have some experience, but I'm always trying to learn some more and learn from the people that have been there and done it.
Yeah, appreciate that. Well, now, David, when you asked the question, he mentioned two. Well, first of all, he mentioned the whole sleep apnea thing, and right? So I know you and I both have been down that path, the sleep study stuff, and I'm not a big fan. But I when you mentioned what you did, Andrew, I immediately, my antenna went up, and I'm like, ooh, I love that business model.
Oh yeah,
I could see where how you benefited from that quite well, because if you know how to scale up an operation. I love the roll up strategy when it's effectively done, and you have the capacity to bring in the right kind of people to help scale a business like that. That's a great way to roll up a business, and because of the particular type of business, I don't know that space well enough to know this off the top of my head, but my guess is if it's like a lot of other professional groups, they're not always operated all that well. They're phenomenally good at what they know, not so good about running a business. To scale into multiple units is usually not a space that most of those people are capable of doing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I kind of got started in sleep medicine, because I was telling David, like, I have a degree in engineering physics. Like, I'm not a clinician by any training or, even though I've had, multiple physicians, NPs, nurse practitioners work for me, that's how I got started in this industry. Is I got into this market early. So I got started in 03 in sleep medicine. And how I got started was I started working for with my brother down at a sleep center called Maimonides Sleep Arts and Sciences here in Albuquerque. And I was just doing some billing, right? I was trying to figure out what I was trying to do. And what happened is that back then there wasn't really any sleep centers around, or sleep medicine physicians even, that were trained, or technologists, because it was almost like a brand new field. So it was pretty much greenfield at that time. And what was happening is that the medical director was trying to help out some other rural areas. If you know about New Mexico, much like Arizona, it's very rural here. Outside of Albuquerque and Santa Fe, it's sparse. And so a lot of these outside towns couldn't get sleep medicine physicians to work in Clovis or Carlsbad or Hobbs or these other small villages. And so he was trying to be a medical director down there. And what was happening is that in order for them to transfer the data, the sleep medicine data, up to the physician in Albuquerque, what they were doing when I first got there is they were mailing burnt DVDs in the mail. Okay. And then when I got there, they said, oh, Andrew, we don't have to mail burnt DVDs anymore. They're all thumb drives. We'll just mail thumb drives. Right. And so I was like, I wasn't even a computer science major, but I was like, hey, you don't have to do that anymore. There's this thing called cloud computing. We'll get a server, and, I'll build a server, and we'll SSH, SSL in there. It'll be completely secure. We'll VPN, like the data will be encrypted. But even if they somehow hacked the data, you got to have a special software even to read this stuff. And so I remember, talking to the physician about what the heck cloud computing was. And I felt like after I had the meeting with him that he was thinking, well, hey, if I put my files in the cloud, they're going to get wet. So, he kept on asking me, like, well, where's the server, right? He's like, where's the server? And it's kind of like asking you, where's your Gmail at? Like, I just told him, I was like, California. I remember I was like, it's in California somewhere. So, but after we kind of got that program up and running, it became massively successful. And that's how I got into consulting, is because a lot of other clinics and hospitals were calling us saying, hey, can you help us build our program? Can you help us, train techs? Can we use this physician to be our medical director? We need help with accreditation. And I just told Dominic, I was like, hey, we should start a business. Like, you run the clinical side and I'll do all the administration. I'll handle all the business stuff. I'll do all the sales. You guys do what you do best, and let me worry about where the cloud is, right?
That's awesome.
That's a great story. I love it.
Thanks.
Very cool. Well, thanks for sharing a bit about your background. And if you wouldn't mind, can you give us just a quick overview of Now Capital Partners?
Sure. So Now Capital Partners is an investment bank. And what I tell people is that we don't do any investments and we don't do any banking. And so it's the weirdest term to give us, because honestly, what we actually do are three things, and it's in this order. Number one, we sell companies. So we sell larger businesses that are anywhere between 5 million in top line revenue all the way up to 200 million in top line revenue. That's job number one for us. The second job that we do is we help people acquire or buy businesses. So we're out there, looking for opportunities. So if you're a private equity group or you're a large strategic and you're looking to grow through acquisition, kind of like how I grew the sleep centers, we'll help you, contact, negotiate, close deals to grow through acquisition. So that's job number two. And then job number three, for smaller startups, typically for companies that are, already have some revenue. They already are, trying to get some traction with investors. They're probably in like a series, A type of round, A or B. We'll help them raise capital from some institutional VCs. Okay. And so we don't do anything that's like early stage or pre-revenue. They have to have some traction, typically around $1 million in sales, with a good path to becoming profitable. So we'll help some smaller businesses raise capital. A lot of times they have to have some form of recurring revenue as well. So that in a nutshell is investment banking, although it has the worst name.
Well, I love it, and it fits perfectly in our theme for today, which is capitalizing on success. So navigating valuation, funding, and a profitable exit. So I think to kind of get into that, as you talked about kind of growing that sleep study business, why did you choose to leverage an M&A strategy to grow that business?
Well, one of the reasons why is because I was trying to expand my market. I wanted to grow my business, and I had grown organically and added on some contracts and added on some locations. And if you know anything about New Mexico, I was in, kind of like central New Mexico of Albuquerque and Albuquerque, Rio Rancho area. And I was looking at Las Cruces. I was like, Las Cruces is a great market and I'd love to be down there. But after looking at the market, I was like, hey, man, there's 4 or 5 sleep centers down here already. The competition, for a smaller town, that's pretty high. I was thinking that, if I could go down there, yeah, maybe I could elbow my way in. Maybe I could set up a sleep center and start to, take some business and increase my market share because I had a better process. I had a better model. It was more of like a one-stop shop where you can get a sleep study, you can get the equipment there, you can get aftercare, you can get your resupply. So I was like, I'm going to do it better than the hospitals and some of these other independents. So I knew I could go down there and do that. And so, but instead, I started contacting a lot of the sleep centers that were down there, and I was telling them, hey, this is my story. This is how I'm growing my business. And so it'd just be networking and talking shop and stuff. And then I would say at the end of a networking meeting with them, I'd say, hey, if you're ever interested in selling your business, let me know because I'm looking to acquire some things. And you know what they all told me? They all said, no, thanks. Like, I'm doing good. Right. Well, a couple of months later, I got a phone call and someone said, hey, are you still buying businesses? And I said, yeah. So I went down there, I talked with them. And the reason that I wanted to use acquisition specifically is that after I bought and acquired, it was called the Mesilla Valley Sleep Lab. After I purchased them, I already had day one, after I signed the paperwork, day one, I already had patients. I already had patients that knew about me and they were already on the schedule and coming in the door. The second thing that I had is I already had employees and I already had a staff on board. You know how hard it is to hire people, right? Especially today. And then the second thing that I had is I already had a facility. This, typically when you start up a new location, you're going to have tenant improvements. You're going to have to find a location. You're going to have to negotiate a lease. You're going to have to, do a build out. You're going to have to train up people and you're going to have to consistently market. So with the amount of money that I would have spent standing up an organic lab, I spent the same amount of money and I was already way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Now, there's some caveats with doing that because that location, it's not yours, right? So, there's some changes there. The other thing that you have to understand is that those employees are not yours either. And they've been trained and they want to kind of stick, well, this is the way that we used to do it, right? You get a lot of that. So you got to be down there and they got to learn from you and they got to see your leadership. They got to make a decision, honestly, about are they going to get in line with our new company values or are they just not a fit and they got to go and do something else? And so that's really where if you don't have the right type of character and courage in order to make those types of decisions regarding your business, then it's probably not for you. And so you should just stand up your own location and just start with what you know and what you're good at, because a lot of times, this is making an omelet here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love it. Yeah, and Eric, I know you probably have some thoughts on that because we talk about, buy then build. And this is almost an extension of that. So any thoughts you want to?
Totally. Yeah, I was literally going through my head, and that's Walter Diebel wrote the book Buy Then Build, and huge proponent of that. I often, in the wireless industry, our second company, the company David and I both worked for, that we eventually sold in 2017 for $84 million. So we had a nice exit. We were executives within the company, but, so we didn't get quite the payday as the owners did, but we did well enough, right? It was a nice transition, but the acquisition strategy, we didn't leverage as much with that company. My previous company before that, we probably acquired 30 to 40% of our retail operation that we had. The point being is that to your point, exactly 100%. You're walking into an existing facility that's already up and running. You're cash flowing day one. right? You've got the people piece. You're right. You got to fix the people piece. I spent my entire career cleaning up somebody else's mess, literally, like from day one when I first started as a store manager till years later as an executive taking over an entire division. I'm always fixing somebody else's problem. That was my entire career in the wireless industry. But my point being is that if you've got those skill sets, which ironically, Andrew, I have a question for you on that. But if you've got the skill sets, you understand the people piece, you understand how to back your way into that process and that, be able to take something that's maybe not exactly what you would have done, but make it yours, right? Through the process. Acquisition is a phenomenal way to grow strategically. Yeah. And, and because you can pick where you want to go. You can, like you said, you went into a market that was relatively maybe crowded and took it. By chance, did you keep all 5 locations in Las Cruces?
I only bought one. I only needed one.
Oh, just the one. Okay.
There was 5 players in the market.
Oh, okay.
And one of them sold to me.
Yeah. Interesting. So, but going through that process, like you said, you're literally hit the ground running with all the key pieces in place, and that's an excellent strategy. So, but my question was from a people component of it, because that's typically where I see a lot of business owners that we work with struggle. They don't have the leadership skill set of taking somebody who's not exactly my hire, right, so to speak, weren't trained my way, that they're struggling to transition into the new philosophy. Where'd you pick up those skills? Is that something you just feel like inherently developed, or?
No, it was all learned. So like I was telling David, I'm a student. And so one of the ways that I learned how to work with people and in HR was from a lady named Ann Rhodes. And she was the head of people at Southwest Airlines. She was the co-founder at JetBlue. She wrote a book called Built on Values. And she was on the board for PF Chang's and DoubleTree. And she lives right here in Albuquerque. And so what I did is I used my network and got her to come in as a consultant to the sleep center. And so I used, I used her program that she offered us in order to build values for our business, to build behaviors around our business. Because if you don't do that, and then you go and do an acquisition like this, if you just let those people go off and do their own thing, they're going to come up with their own culture. They're going to come up with their own values, and they're going to be, treating patients how they think that they want to be treated. And so, if you don't have that type of focus, that core value to your business, then how are you trying to, make decisions about whether a person's doing a good job or not? Because they could have the capacities to do the job. They obviously have been working in an industry, so they can have the capacity to be a physician or be a technologist or be a billing specialist or even just answer the phones and schedule patients. But are they a culture's match with your organization? Because if not, then they're not a good fit for your organization. And that's a tough decision to make because it's hard to hire people. But you've probably been in a situation where you've hired people and then you're like, oh man, that guy's a rock star. That guy's like an A player. If we could only hire more Erics, we would be completely successful. And then you hire David and you're just like, man, we got to fire him next week. Like, this is just not working out. Like, you've had those situations. And so you kind of got to do that when you make an acquisition. And so when because it's not for everybody, it's, if you're not able, because honestly, some of the reasons that people hire us to come in and help them with acquisitions is to be that third party. Because business owners, when you're talking about growing through acquisition, that's the fast lane. Like you experienced, when you grow through acquisition, that's fast, right? You're not on the sidewalk. You're in the fast lane. You can do multiple acquisitions. You can expand your company rapidly. But the worst thing you can do is make a bad acquisition.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so people will get very emotional about completing a deal. Oh man, I got this opportunity, and they see all these red flags, and I'm going to be the third party there. That probably my best job is to tell you, hey man, I've seen all kinds of red flags here. There's all kinds of, skeletons in the closet. I've uncovered all these dead bodies. Are you sure you want to do this? Because I just talked to you about how hard it is to make a bad hire. Just imagine if you're spending hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars making a bad acquisition. How do you back out of that?
Yeah.
Right? So really, our job in doing due diligence and quality of earnings and helping, be that third party sounding board, that takes a little bit of the emotion out of it. that's really a success, and where we can strategize on not only contacting folks, but making sure that you're just not making a bad move, because it's really hard to unwind.
Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, that was a great analogy. You can make a bad hire. That's tough. That's a pain in the butt. But you make a bad acquisition. That's yeah. Well, David, we can go back to our careers. Sprint Nextel, that was an ugly disaster.
Yeah, it was.
I could probably go through a number of them actually, I think, through the years. But I mean, it's you go through an acquisition like that and you lose half the valuation in the first 18 months. Yeah, that was probably a bad deal, right?
Ouch. Yeah.
So, those mistakes have a lot more commas than zeros, and that's a problem.
Yeah, exactly.
And you want to have somebody on your team that's done that, right? And so, because probably the person that was, in charge of that executive team, I bet they looked in the mirror and they were like, we're never doing that again. Right. That's kind of part of being a business owner, is that no one's writing a book about your specific business. There's no manual to read. So
that's a great
you got to
point.
kind of go out there and make some mistakes. And while, we can all laugh about it later, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
Right. No one's going to, take your birthday away or take your name or whatever. You can fix it. So go out there and do some damage, and figure it out. That's what I would tell some of my employees. I would say, just go out there and break some shit and then let me know and come back and tell me what's going on. So, and then we can fix it. Right. Because if we don't know how to do it, like, I'm not saying be like reckless or anything, but we got to be a creative. We got to be innovative. And so they would come to me and say, hey, how do you want us to do this? Or how should we do this? And, I could, tell them what my thoughts were, but I want to hear from them, like how they're going to approach it. Right. I want to get a lot of different ideas, because that's how you become innovative and that's how you grow your organization. So, but yeah, go out there and skin your knee a little bit and figure it out.
Yeah. Great advice. Quite honestly, in my opinion, that's a lot of people in leadership roles struggle with delegation, right? But letting go of control is probably another component of that, slightly different. But letting go of control and allowing people to, you tell me, what do you think we should do? Let them think for themselves. Teach them to think for themselves. That's how you grow a really phenomenal organization. When you try and dictate everything that you do from the top down, that's when things get stifled. Right. And there's no ingenuity. There's no innovation, to your point earlier. And consequently, that company will eventually peter out and will lose all its potential growth.
Right. I would tell my employees, I would say, whenever they came to me with some situation like that, where they're like, hey, I need, to figure, how would you do this? Or, they need help with the situation. I would just instill confidence in them. And I used a very specific phrase, and I would say, hey, Eric, you're real smart. I'm sure you can figure it out. There's no way that you're going to disagree with that. Like you're going to say to yourself, no, I'm a dummy, right? I don't think I'm going to be able to do this. But if it's like, hey, you're real smart. Like, I trust you. I'm sure you're going to be able to figure it out. And if come up with a solution. If you want to bounce it off me, that's great. But come up with some ideas and let's think about it. Let's talk through it. So maybe get with your team. Call some people. Call somebody that's already done this before. I don't know. Get on the internet. Get on YouTube. Talk to somebody. Maybe get your team together. There's all kinds of different problem solving areas, and that's why I think that part of my success was from that like engineering background that I had before. Mm-hmm. And so I worked at Coors Brewing Company for a long time in R&D. I worked in packaging R&D, and we just ran all kinds of crazy experiments on cans, bottles, cases, full pallets. Like you'd be amazed at the amount of research and development it takes to figure out how thick you need to have a glass bottle be in order for it to make it from Golden to the East Coast. All right. And so these guys we're literally throwing bottles against the wall, right? Dropping stuff, banging stuff, vibrating stuff, exploding stuff inside with internal pressures. And so there's all kinds of different solutions out there. And so that's why I was like, I don't know, there's never one way to do this thing. Just go and figure it out.
Right. Interesting perspective. That's amazing. So were you part of the team that designed the can that changes colors when it's cold?
No, that was after me, I think. I was there when they came out with like the vented can. So that was kind of a big thing there. It was the vented can. You know what they had there that was really cool was, and I wish they'd come back with this because it was an amazing product. They had this thing, it was only out for a little bit. They had a case of Coors Light that was in these plastic bottles. They weren't cans and they weren't glass. They were actually looked like plastic bottles. And what was amazing is you could rip the top of this package off and then just dump a bag of ice in there, and it was an instant cooler.
Nice.
You could take it to the pool. I remember people were like, "Hey, you can't have that glass here at the pool," and I'd like bang this bottle on my head. I'm like, "This is plastic." Right? So because it looks brown, like it's a brown plastic, and you just have it in this case. But you could it was waterproof on the bottom. You just rip the top off. You threw some ice in, and you could go to the beach or whatever. And I don't know whatever happened to that, but I was like, "Man, this is gonna kill it." But I think it was too expensive to make. So yeah, so I think that's why it kind of died.
Awesome. Well, as we're talking about lessons learned, I'm thinking about, kind of the trajectory of Quality Sleep Solutions. So you go from the single, acquisition in Las Cruces all the way to 23 locations, right? Mm-hmm. Multiple states. And then you sell. What lessons did you learn while selling the business?
Well, I made all the wrong moves when I went to sell my business. And that's part of my story about how I got involved in M&A. So what happened was I was like, oh man, I got all these locations. My business is doing great. Like, it's time for me to cash out. Like I should, take some chips off the table. I should reduce my risk. All my net worth is in this business. And I think it's about time to do this. And so what happened is that once I went out to market, I made some critical errors. So as I was going out to market and going through an M&A process, reimbursements just took a nosedive because of competitive bid to the durable medical equipment codes. So competitive bid came out. We weren't even a Medicare provider, but what happened is that after competitive bid and a lot of the big DME companies really lowballed the heck out of the reimbursement, they came out with a second law that said that the new competitive bid rate is going to be the bid rate for everybody. And so what happened is that all of our commercial contracts, like Blue Cross, United, any of those are all set up as a percentage of Medicare. And so it affected all of my contracts. And here I'm trying to sell my business, and now reimbursements really just almost took like a 40% cut. It was I can laugh about it now, but there's a lot of smaller DME companies that just went out of business within the next couple of years. Wow. And so, and then the next thing I did is the next bad move that I made is I chose the wrong M&A advisor. I didn't know. I didn't really shop around. I didn't really get multiple quotes. And that really wasn't even like me. I look back on it now. I was like, why didn't I go and talk to multiple people? Why didn't I get a referral? Like, that's not like me. I should have asked, some more questions. And so I chose the wrong M&A advisor. My market was declining. And so I really just got out by the skin of my teeth. Right. And so after I sold my business, then I was frustrated. I was super angry. I was pissed. I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this, right? And that's how I started doing research, and I started learning more about this. And then I got involved with Bruce over at Affinity Ventures, learned a bunch from him. And Bruce is like 73 years old now. So he's been doing this a long time. So I learned a lot from him. He's now kind of, in retirement mode. So that's why I came over to Now Capital Partners. But, I've been doing this for 4 years now. And that's why, I have a passion for this, because I don't want to see business owners get hurt like I did, right? It's not right. Like, I spent 14 years building that business. And if there's ways that I can help other business owners not make the same mistakes that I did, or at least say, hey, I've made all the mistakes now so that you don't have to, so you can benefit from my foolishness, essentially. So I've done all the bad things that you can think about doing when it comes to M&A. And I don't know, I guess that's just kind of like a recurring thing with me, is that I sometimes have to learn the hard way.
I think that happens to the best of us.
Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of business gets created that way, about people that are frustrated. They see something in the market, or they have a frustration, or they're like, oh man, there's got to be a better way to do this. Like, I'm sure there's an entrepreneur out there right now that's saying that to themselves, just a couple inches away from a mirror.
Well, I can tell you that with my experience with the trucking business, when I launched my trucking business back in fall of 2017, we had a phenomenal 2018. I put on 26 trucks. By the end of the year, we were billing about $550,000 a month. And unfortunately, I did it with a lot of debt because that's what it took, because I didn't have access to a ton of capital. I did it all on a couple $100,000 I was able to pull together, and my personal credit, which was really good when I started.
Mm-hmm.
And but business credit, you don't know about that. You don't know how to manage that. You don't know how to get it in the beginning, and then when you get it, you're like, well, okay. And every opportunity that was presented to me sounded like a great opportunity. I'm like, oh, you have 6 lanes that go from Northern California to Southern California. That's phenomenal. Let's add I need 6 more trucks. Let's get them on the road. And it was just like that. I mean, we had a phenomenal on-time rate. Everybody wanted to work with us. And it was like, I didn't want to say no to anybody who wanted to offer us more business.
Sure.
But I knew it was a capital intensive business. I just did not realize how significantly capital intensive it was.
Sure. Yeah. You can get over your skis with leverage.
Yep. And without a backstop with cash to fall back on, a slowdown in the business, which, I even knew it was coming. It was a seasonal thing, but it was a much bigger slowdown for some reason that I couldn't put my finger on at that point. It ended up burying us and pushing back the other direction. And I can tell you, if I could have held out for 18 more months, COVID hit. The same routes that I was running 18 months later during COVID, we're going for twice the rates.
Whoa. That's
we were doing what we were running at $1.85, $1.95 a mile. They were paying $3.50, $3.75 a mile.
Jeez. Yeah, I remember that time. Yeah, that's wild. Yep. You can definitely get in trouble with debt, just like you can get in trouble with equity and bringing on the wrong partners. So, there's no such thing as a free lunch. When someone's going to give you money, there's some terms that go with that you need.
And that was actually, I was trying to avoid that. To your point, I was trying to avoid. I knew I was going to need to bring in a partner. I knew I was going to need some capital somehow, and I knew I wasn't going to do it on my own for what my vision was for my business. But the challenge was, in the grand scheme of things, I wanted to get it as established as possible before I went and made that, connection and brought that person in. And then I didn't realize how hard it was going to be. That's a whole nother business in and of itself, is going out and raising capital.
Oh, yeah. It takes the right type of personality. It takes the right type of tenacity. It takes, a person that can handle that type of rejection, unfortunately. So you got to have some thick skin, and you got to have a little bit of an air of arrogance as well, is what I tell some of our people, is that you got to know that you're going to get this money one way or another. It's going to be from this person or from the next, because everybody's money is green and it all spends. And so you got to just talk to enough people, the right people that understand what it is that you're doing.
Yep.
And that's what people from what I can see when it comes to VC investment, is that they're very attracted to confidence. They're very attracted to people that can display a path of success and say, hey, this is what we've done leading up to this. We've turned this $1 into $10, and I'm going to show you how to do it. We've built this amazing vehicle. All you're going to do is you're just going to put some gas in the tank. We have it ready to go. And if you're, not the right gas station, I'm just going to go down the street to the next gas station and get filled up there. So you're either, you kind of almost have to be a little bit nonchalant about your, capital raising approach, and then just be, put in the room with the right amount of people that are looking for good opportunities. And in the back of your mind, what you have to know is there's more money out there than good deals to invest in.
That's a great point.
There's so much capital out there that would just blow your, we can't even fathom what the trillions of dollars of capital that's out there. That's just because there's people actually out there right now having a conversation saying, hey man, I wish I could get into a good deal. Do you know of any good startups, man? I got some extra cash. Like I'm looking to make some investments. I want to get a good return. There's people out there having those conversations regularly in the real estate market, in the private equity market, in the VC market, in the family office market. There's all this cash out there that's just looking for a good deal. And so you got to know that you're the prize, right? Your business and your opportunity is what's valuable, not their money, right? There's so much money out there and people are like, oh man, if I could just, raise this money, that it's so hard to do this, and it's everywhere. You just got to find the right people. You got to get put in the right room, and you got to make sure that investor has confidence that they're going to get their money back.
Right.
And then some. And I know I make it sound simple. It's a lot harder than that when you're actually trying to do a pitch, because you're super nervous. Like even getting on this podcast, I felt a little bit of jitters, and I was like, what, it brought back some of those days where I'm in front of an investor, with my PowerPoint presentation, going over a pitch and saying, you just need to give us, $1 million. It's fine. You'll be good. Like, so, you want to have that confidence in you. And a lot of times it takes a lot of practice. And so you really got to go out there and stub your toe a little bit, because the first time you do it, you're probably not going to be successful, right? It's like riding a bike. Like you really just got to do it over and over and have thick enough skin to know that, you can't just be like, oh, I pitched this deal 3 times and they all rejected me. Well, dude, you got to go out there and really work at it, because that's the only way you can learn, is you got to get that feedback from them and adjust it and do something different. And to be honest, you got to take a little bit of a risk. You got to make sure that you're memorable. And that's either by what you say, how you act, how you dress. I remember this one guy that would raise money in Tevas. And I was like, why do you wear Tevas, dude? Like, I'm in a suit, right? I always like to look sharp. And I was like, man, why do you, I know, I was like, and this guy was ultra successful. I was like, hey, why do you wear Tevas all the time? And he's like, I'll tell you a secret. He's all, so that people remember me. He's all like, I guarantee you after this meeting, someone's going to say, oh yeah, that was that guy that was wearing sandals. I was like, I don't know if you're crazy or if you're a genius, but he raised more money than me. So I was like, maybe it's all like looking at my footwear saying, maybe I should get some Tevas. I don't know, but I was like, I don't think I can do that. I was like, but his point is that you got to be unique. You got to be yourself, and whatever is unique about you, you got to at least make it memorable. So take a risk out there. Go out there and make sure that you're memorable, and make sure that people are gonna when after they hear your pitch that they're never gonna forget it. Right.
That's a great point. Excellent. I appreciate you sharing that. It's phenomenal, because I know there's a lot of people that listen in would like to hear that type of information. A quick question for you in regards to you're kind of talking about the current market. You're mentioning lots of good deals, lots of money, not a lot of good deals, right? And but interesting with the interest rate changes, with all the impact to the how does that impacted the VC market right now? Is it people are more what's the word I want to use? They're more disciplined, maybe, and looking at new deals, being a little bit more conservative in looking at opportunities. Is that accurate?
I would say so. Yeah, that's a good characterization of it, because before the current interest rate rise, interest rates, I think you would agree, were artificially low. 0%, that's artificial. Like they were put that low by the Federal Reserve in order to increase the economy. And so now interest rates and so what that's done is it increased a lot of investment in a lot of startup companies that you saw in 2020, 2021. And even, last year, the end of 21, the beginning of 22 was really the peak of M&A, because private equity also uses a lot of leverage, a lot of debt in order to purchase businesses. And so just like when you're buying houses, like you're going to buy your own family home, when interest rates are low, you can afford more house. So private equity groups do the same thing. Interest rates were artificially low, so now they can afford to make a larger bid on a business, right? So valuations went, to some crazy levels that we saw.
Right.
Now, I think honestly, they're back down to what I would call normal levels, because that was really it was really like a peak. And now, because of the interest rates where they're at now, they have come down, not a lot, but they're down back now to what I would say was normal level. So there's still a lot of deals that are getting done. We have a bunch of deals that are going out to market that are getting a lot of interest. So there's still interest out there, but now values are kind of more at a normal level from what we saw, in the previous 2 years ago. And to be honest, like I was trying to yell from the rooftops to people, hey, you should, you should sell your business, right? I'm like, now, because they want to see some type of sign, right? They're like, because that's the frequently asked question. Andrew,
when's the right time?
When should I sell my business?
Right.
And sometimes when you're too honest with them, and I'm all like, now is the time. And this was the company, I was like, now is the time. And they, I should have prefaced that with saying, I try to give them some education, but a lot of times when you're an M&A advisor, they'll think, well, this guy's just trying to get me to sign up with his company so he can earn a commission. But you can't go back in time and sell your business. And so,
right.
that was the ultimate time to sell your business, just like it was the ultimate time to sell your house, right? It was during those pandemic era ages, because valuations were just incredible. So, are we going to see that again? Maybe. No one has a crystal ball.
Right. Great point. Appreciate you sharing that.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
So kind of going a little further into that, what are some of the main things that business owners misunderstand when it comes to their business valuation?
That's a great question. That's probably one of the things that we talk about the most when I'm strategizing with business owners, because a lot of times the misconception is that it's all just about EBITDA. It's all just about the profit of my business. Someone's going to just take my profitability and apply a multiple, and whatever that says, that's just the amount of money that I'm going to get. That is it's a myth, and it's a misconception. There's really multiple different things that buyers look at beyond EBITDA. That's kind of like a way to do a rough calculation to make sure that you're in kind of like the ballpark, but they're also going to look at what's your sales process like.
Right.
Who has the relationship with some of these clients? Is it the business owner? And if that business owner goes away, what's going to happen to my sales, right? The other one is, do you have processes and documentation and training for your employees to make sure that what you're doing is duplicatable without the owner there? Then there's also what we talked about for a while is the people aspect. What are your people doing? How, independent are they? Are they able to make decisions? Are they able to hire other good people? And then beyond that, who's overseeing those people? What does your management team look like? Do you even have a management team? You'd be surprised how many business owners I talk to where it's like, no, I just kind of, this organizational chart is flat, right? There's no hierarchy of who should be reporting to who. And then the other one is like data and metrics, right? What type of data are you pulling out of your systems? And it's not like, oh yeah, I have the data. We can get data. We don't really look at the data.
Right.
There in a report. But can you show me a history of how you've made decisions in your business in the past based on data, where it's like, hey, we need to increase marketing here. Hey, we need to cut back inventory here because this is what the data is. We're slowing down, like you were talking about, Eric. Hey, there's been a slowdown here. Maybe we should sell some trucks. Right. I'm looking at the data. I'm looking at industry data. It seems like there's going to be a slowdown. I'm going to make some adjustments to my business. We're going to all make decisions. What are red flags that are going up? Is my AR getting out of hand? Is my AP getting out of hand? Like, I don't know. And then the last one is that what type of technology and software are you using to get that data, right? Are you getting it, or is it just like I'm on QuickBooks and I sent an invoice and I just look at my financials? Your financials are not. While there's some data in there, there's more data that you're probably missing. Right. And then one of the other ones that really can stub some people's toes are legal issues around that you may have with employees. Just a short example, you may have a management team where you bring on somebody and you told them, hey, I'm the CEO, and I told them, hey, if I was ever to sell this business in the future, I'll make sure to take care of you. Even a conversation like that can come back to bite you in the butt when you're trying to do a deal. And so it's things like that. So I think that I just outlined some things that are really just off the top of my head that aren't even anywhere close to the profitability or EBITDA or what your multiple is or what interest rates are. That's what buyers are looking at. And for many of my clients, when we talk about these situations, they don't really think that those were ever even issues that a buyer would even look at.
Right.
So we try to highlight those, and we try to, highlight the strengths of the business. But if there's weaknesses, let us fix them. It's kind of like, to make the comparison with housing. Like if I'm your real estate agent, I come over to your house, Eric, and I'm like, hey, Eric, you want to sell this home? Looks beautiful, but hey, I got up on the roof. The roof's a little soft in certain areas. You may want to fix that. The kitchen's a little dated or whatever. Like I'm going to show some areas, and it's like, you can either go and fix those yourself, or maybe you hire a consulting firm like us to help you fix them for you. We're kind of like a general contractor that's going to come in and say, hey, we're going to put a new roof on, or we're going to, update the kitchen in order for you to get maximum value for your home. The same thing happens with your business. If you have all those issues that are going on with your business, not really issues, but just weaknesses. They're just weaknesses in your business. Let us fix them, or let us show you a plan for you to fix them. And I can say, okay, Eric, go and do 1, 2, and 3, and then come back to me, and then let me know when you need further instructions to fix this issue that you have with your sales team, right? I want them to be on autopilot. I want you to go on vacation and you to come back to your business and you have more sales than when you left, right? So allow us to do it, or let us show you a roadmap where you can do it yourself.
Yeah, great points. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. I think definitely a lot of misunderstanding around valuation. And I think something else that is often misunderstood, and I'd love if you could illuminate it for our audience, is recapitalizations.
Yeah. So I love recapitalizations because nobody talks about it. I talk to so many business owners, and it's the first time that they've ever heard of it. And they often ask me, hey, how come I never heard of this? And I don't know why. I don't know why it's not talked about a little bit more. I think that the misconception is that when people go to sell their business, they just assume they're going to sell 100%. They just assume that that's selling your business is just cashing out completely. When, to be honest, there's about a dozen different ways to sell your business. And recapitalization is just one of them. So I'll give you a direct example of when recapitalization can really work. And what it's a fancy term for selling a portion of your business, for selling typically a majority of your business to, say, like a private equity group. So I'll give you an example. We had a company that was in the medical space. I'm just going to use some round numbers just so everybody can follow along. But they were about a $10 million company. They came to us and they were like, hey, we want to sell our business. They went through our process. They got multiple competitive offers, and they decided to sell to this private equity group. And the business owner and the private equity group decided that the private equity group was going to purchase 70% of the business. Okay. So what happens is the business owner at close got a check for $7 million. He puts that in his pocket for him and his family. Now he has a financial partner that's with him through the business. And so what he does is, on day one after they close, he's still the president and CEO. He's still making a great salary. He's still making great benefits. He got rid of all of his business debt. We were talking about debt earlier, Eric. He got rid of his lines of credit. He got rid of all those pesky personal guarantees that are associated with
right.
that.
Yeah, great point.
Now he has a financial partner that's backing him. And so they came to him and they said, hey, what do you need to do in order to grow this business? And he said, well, I already have these acquisitions lined up, and I also want to invest in this technology. And they said, okay, well, go ahead and do it. And so together they grew the business from $10 million up to $30 million. At that point, they sold the company a second time. We call this getting a second bite of the apple. And at that stage, he sold 25% of his remaining 30%. He technically made more money on the second deal than he did on the first. He stayed on with the second buyer as chairman of the board at 5% ownership. They brought in an outside CEO to replace him out of daily operations. And then together they grew the business with that second buyer from 30 million up to 50 million. And that's when he made his final exit. And so a lot of times business owners don't really know of that strategy until they're looking to sell their business. And then I'm trying to maybe, talk to them about this. And they're like, man, I wish I would have known about this 2 years ago,
Yeah.
Or, it really doesn't work if you're like, 73, 74, and you're just like, hey, I just want to retire. I need to get out completely, right?
Right.
So you want to make sure that you have enough gas in the tank in order to take it to that second bite, because if not, then you should just sell 100%. So it's not for everybody, but I think it's a great strategy that a lot of business owners just don't know about.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal point. And to your point, that's because that strategy is so effective. That initial pull the money off the table, in many cases, that may be the only money that owner ever actually sees.
Sure.
Because as you know, as well as I do, 80% of businesses never sell.
Mm-hmm.
So, knowing that, and the fact that you're in a position to be able to sell today doesn't mean that 3 to 4 years from now, you're going to get the same offer for that same business.
Sure. Well, it does a couple of things. It reduces your risk.
Yep.
Owning a business is incredibly risky, right? With your trucking company, you're one accident away, one lawsuit away. Your employees can do something stupid. In today's age, they can send out a dumb tweet and your business can be ruined, right? There's a lot of risks associated with your business. And so if you're able to, take some chips off the table, reduce your risk. And then for that owner that put that $7 million in his pocket, do you know what he did with that money? He diversified. So he worked with his wealth advisor to say, hey, your business was all in this trucking industry. Now we're going to be in stocks, bonds, real estate, other businesses, other startups, whatever. Let's create a diversified portfolio because you really had all your wealth in this one bucket. Let's reduce some risk. Let's diversify. I would imagine there's some like wealth advisors that are, on this podcast, just like, yeah, this is what we need, because I work a lot with wealth advisors and they're trying to advise their clients. Hey man, your portfolio is lopsided. Like you got all your eggs in one basket. You've been funding your 401k or funding your IRA or whatever you're doing, but there's caps to that. And you got a multi-million-dollar company here. And you're, like I said, you're one tweet away. Who knows?
Right.
Like no one has a crystal ball. So yeah, worst case scenario. Here's the worst case scenario. If you were to do a recap and you were that guy, worst case scenario, you sell to the private equity group. They totally run it into the ground. You still have $7 million that's there for yourself and for your family.
Right.
That's worst case. Cry your way all the way to the bank if you want to.
Love it. Well, those are some great tips, and I'd be curious, apart from maybe somebody who's not wearing their Tevas or Crocs to these capital meetings, any other things that you see small business owners mess up when they're seeking capital and kind of going into these pitch meetings and things like that?
Oh man, there's so many ways that a person can mess up a pitch. I mean. There's probably more ways that you can mess it up than you can be successful. So I think, be yourself, be honest, and have confidence. And, whatever that means for you specifically, and also be unique, like I was talking about. I think that's really where most people mess up, is that they can be a little bit afraid to take a risk. So don't be, you got to have a lot of courage to go to somebody and ask them for money because if you've ever read a PPM or done an investment, right there on the first page, it says, consider this money lost. Like if you can't afford to invest in this, just consider this money gone. And you're asking someone to be like, hey, sign this document. I know it says that on the first page, but everything will be fine. So you got to have a lot of courage, right? You got to have a lot of determination and discipline in order to be able to do that. So while there's many ways to, kill a deal or to be real sullen or to, not be excited about what it is that you're doing or let your passions show through, I think that's probably the biggest way to get, investors into your deal is to get them excited. People like to do business with other people that they're just like, I would get sometimes people that would approach me and be like, hey, Andrew, it's not a good time for me to invest. I got X, Y, and Z going on, but man, I just really love, what you're doing, and they just wanted to be they just want to be friends. Like I'm good with that. Like I want to have friends that have money. Right. So in case when the next opportunity comes around, just think about that. Like think about how you made friends or how you married your wife or how you, got into a relationship. You weren't boring when you went on the first date. Think about that when you're going to go out there because this is all relationships. This is all about how people present themselves, how people build that relationship, and how you can build that trust quickly with them, right? They just, you got to have kind of a magnetic personality in many cases. That's the way that I've seen that it's done. I mean, you don't have to be a used car salesman and try to like hard close anybody. I don't recommend that. That's a good way to blow it.
Yeah,
for somebody. Sure. But you just got to be honest with them and be upfront. And I think that that's probably at least what I've seen from a lot of our different clients that have done pitches and have received cash is that's what my recommendation would be.
Yeah. Andrew, not to tell you your business, but if I'd add one thing to that, it would be know your numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Like when someone asks you a question, because there's people out there that got to have the metrics, right?
Yep.
There's nerds like us that are engineers. Yep. They're just like, you need to tell me this number. And if you can nail it, then they're like, oh man, this guy knows his numbers. I'm good with it, right? Because you can just, of course, you got to know your metrics. That's a great point, Eric. I couldn't say that better.
Awesome. Yep. Well, Andrew, we've been talking a lot about, selling your business, understanding your valuation. I think it'd be good to maybe pivot just a little bit and talk about buying a business. And specifically, if somebody's listening to this, watching this, and they're thinking about buying a business, why is it important for them to utilize a partner like Now Capital Partners for data collection and due diligence?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing that you want to do when approaching an acquisition strategy is to have an acquisition plan. And we help people formulate that plan. What type of market are you looking for? What type of business are you looking for? What does it have to have, right? Because you need a criteria list in order to make this investment. Because if you don't go into an acquisition with a criteria, then everything's going to look good, right? But if you find some things that's like, hey, that's not on my criteria, that's out of my market, or it's not this size, or they don't have this contract, or they need to have this type of process, whatever it is, those are all red flags. Hey, it didn't fall into this criteria. And then the other one is once you have that written exit strategy, when you're going to go out and execute, the toughest thing that people will stumble on when they're going to go out and do some acquisitions is when you call up that target and you get them on the phone, you get one chance to make an impression. You get one bite of the apple and that's it. And so if you're like doing a pitch, so if you're not confident, if you don't know your numbers, if you're not able to build that relationship, if you're not able to get that person to move forward to the next step of providing, because you're going to, at the end of that call, you're going to ask them to send you their financials. You know how tough that is? Right? You don't know me, I don't know you, but at the end of this call, you're going to send me your financials, right? So, I mean, that's a short move to build trust. And if that's not you, then let me do it. Like, I can do that. I do that. That's pretty much my daily job. I do that daily. I'm on the phone talking to business owners, talking to them about their strategy. What's their exit strategy? What situations are they in? Are they looking for investors? Are they, what are they going to sell to their kids? I hate my kids, whatever. Right. So you got to find out quickly, how you're going to build that trust. And if that's not your personality, but you have a great model, then hire somebody, have a hired gun that's going to make that phone call and get and present target acquisitions that you can acquire, that you can be able to go out and be able to be successful through acquisition. Because I think that's probably the toughest thing, is that everybody's going to say, well, I'm just going to look on Biz Buy Sell, or I'm just going to look for deals that are in the market. To be honest, all the businesses that I've ever purchased were not for sale. I'll just leave you with that. And so a lot of times people, they're not ready. Now, that's kind of funny that I say that, because a lot of times I'll talk to business owners and I'll ask them, I'm like, oh, what's your exit strategy? And they'll kind of, they don't want to share. They don't know me that well. And so they may say, wow, if someone walks in the door with a bunch of money, like anything's for sale, right? And so you're that person walking in the door and you're like, hey, I got my checkbook ready. Like, you want to do a deal? So, you got to be able to be that person that's there to solve some of their problems. You got to figure out where they're having, pain points at, and the ability for you to create trust, create that relationship, and move it forward. And so, and then have that third party that's there to validate it. Get a quality of earnings. Have an accounting firm. If you need a forensic accounting firm or whoever, make sure that you're getting those financials reviewed. Make sure that you're looking at their bank statements, doing a reconciliation, a quality of earnings tie out, because people trust people too much when it comes to financials sometimes. So you got to make sure that what they're saying and what they're doing is that they're not lying, cheating, or stealing. So bring in an outside accounting firm, have a due diligence process that's in your business plan that you can stick to, that we can understand. So in case we do find red flags, that you can reduce that risk, or maybe you need to change your offer in order to de-risk that acquisition. Okay. Right. So there's a lot of things that we can do in order to help you make a good transaction.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think just maybe touch on one other thing is, I think one of the things that you do, obviously working on the buyer side of it, but if you're working with somebody that's selling, you help them find the right buyers, right? That right pool of buyers. So kind of how do you do that in your role with NCP?
It's kind of complicated and kind of like how the sausage is made, essentially. So we have databases, and these databases are very expensive to get access to. Things like PitchBook and Capital IQ. And so our company invests in us to have access to these very expensive databases that a normal business owner is not going to pay $30,000, $40,000 just to get onto. All right. So we compile databases and we start to create lists. We're list makers, we're deal makers. And a lot of times that has to deal with finding people in strategic lists, finding private equity in strategic sectors, who's doing deals, who, if there's an announcement that came out where they've made an investment, who are the shareholders that made that investment into this biotech company, right? We put that into our database so that way when we run into another opportunity, we have a massive database of buyers and investors that are looking for deals. That's probably the first way that we find good investors for people, is that we're master list makers. Mm-hmm. The second way is through networking. So I network just like I network with Eric, and I want to know who these private equity companies are. I want to know who these VC investors are. So there's networking groups that we go to. One of the ones that probably is maybe mostly well known is ACG. So we go to almost every ACG conference that's out there. We're in Vegas. I was just in Montauk, New York, out at the tip of Long Island, networking with private equity groups and family offices and funds and other investment bankers, talking about opportunities that they're looking for, right? What are they looking for in the market? What are they seeing? What do they need? What are some of the opportunities? How can we work together on creating this deal? And so we not only, are creating the list, but then we're networking with those people that are on that list, so I can build a relationship with them. So that way, not only if, hey, I got a deal, do you want to buy this? But a lot of times I need resources, right? I need things that they're kind of seeing, and we kind of help each other out and provide resources to each other through this network, to get a deal over the finish line. Oh my, I need another investor to come in and fill up my roles. Do you have anybody? Yeah, I had a guy ask me yesterday, hey, if you need anybody that fills up a certain space, let me know. And so it's kind of interesting how the world works that way. And so that's how we find buyers, is by, having these massive databases that have been cultivated over years, over, time, that of people asking us, hey, we need deals. And there's a lot of private equity out there. So those are really kind of the two ways, is just through general networking, going to conferences, meeting people, using LinkedIn, using social media, and developing lists.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's really important, because it's not just, hey, you're helping them find the right pool. You have really big pools, right? And I think that's something that people don't understand, is, so many more people, and you have those networks, those connections, those databases. So it's really a difference of, trying to sell your house by yourself for sale by owner versus using a well-connected realtor who's been doing it for 15 years, right? So totally different experience.
Yep, you got it. Yeah, you can create. Creating listings are fine, and you should want to have a listing. But just imagine if you're selling your house and you're creating a listing, but you're also emailing everybody in the city that you're selling your house.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
right.
Makes sense.
Well, and I think that I think that a lot of lot of people don't understand, whether it's business owners or somebody who's looking to buy in a business. What they often don't understand is that they, depending on where you're at in the grand scheme of things, there's only a very small select group of people that are even remotely interested in the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, you're talking about a fraction of a % of people that are actually interested in even buying that business, right? But so the challenge being is that you have to make sure that you're swimming in the right pool. Otherwise, there is no way in the world that you're going to connect with the right people that are going to be interested in your opportunity. And I think that when I talk to business owners, like, I'm just going to put my business up for sale. And to your point about Biz Buy Sell will list 50,000 businesses a year. And of those 50,000, they'll probably sell 7, maybe 8,000 a year. They have 15% conversion rate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? But that many, and if not most, I'd probably say 90% of them are probably sub $1 million in gross revenue, probably sub $1 million price point.
Yep.
Right? Because that's where the average person can play if they want to do it. If they're the 5% of people that would buy a business, they can play in that space. If you're talking 10, 15, 25, 50 million, you're talking such a small fraction of a percent. You have to know where those people are and where they're at on a regular basis to be able to make those connections.
You're absolutely right. Because just to give you an example of how small of a percentage is that we typically we're going to email out a one-pager or one-page teaser or confidential information memorandum to our database. And that one-pager will maybe go to anywhere between, like, depending on the sector, anywhere between like 15,000 to 20,000 emails and contacts, right? And
Wow.
of that, there's going to be maybe 100, maybe 200 SIMs if you're lucky that get sent out. And then of those 200 SIMs that get sent out, like on a good deal, you're probably looking at 3 to 4 offers, maybe 10 offers, maybe 12 offers. So I mean,
Wow.
do that math. Right.
Yeah.
You want to kick over every rock. And that's what my job is I like doing it. Yeah. If you've ever looked under rocks, you find some amazing things, right? You never know what's under. There could be a snake or a lizard or whatever. It could be gold. Right. And so, yeah, I want to kick over every rock and find out, hey, is this buyer interested? And that's what my whole job is I'm on the phone calling PE groups and finding out, hey, are you interested or not? Like, we got a bunch of other people that are looking at this. So just let me know. It's, no sweat. If you're interested, great, let's move forward. If not, just let me know and I can stop bothering you.
Right.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, as we kind of wrap up here, I'd be curious, are there any things that we haven't talked about that you think a business owner should focus on to ensure a successful exit?
Yeah. Like I said, with acquisitions, have a written exit strategy. Know who you want to sell your business to. And this may sound harder than it is to do, but you always want to have your business ready for an exit because you never know what's around the corner. You never know if there's going to be a pandemic or a supply shortage or whatever the case may be. So you want to have a written exit strategy, whatever that strategy is going to be. If you're going to sell to your children, if you're going to sell to a manager, if you're going to go public, if you're going to do a recapitalization, if you're going to sell 100%, if you're going to do an ESOP, right? Those are all just a couple of strategies that I can rattle off the top of my head, but have a written exit strategy that you've talked about with an M&A advisor, with your financial advisor, with your CPA, with your attorney, with your spouse, with your spiritual advisor, whoever's on your team, right? Make sure that they know like what your plan is, right? Because then they can give you some advice. The worst thing you can do is just, one day have to sell your business. I gotta, this happened. I gotta sell my business now, but I don't know what to do. I'm kind of in a panic mode. Like if you come to me, buyers can smell that, right? So have a written exit strategy. And if you need a written exit strategy, contact me. That's why I have this whiteboard here behind me. We do strategy sessions all day with business owners trying to figure out their specific situation in their specific market and what their goals are and how they're going to get there. So that way we can develop a strategy for them to make sure that they're successful. So that's pretty much our entire job, is to make sure that people are prepared. I love planning.
Love it.
Yeah, great point. I can only echo that the important part there to Andrew's point is to know in advance. I've told this story a couple times on the channel, but when our previous company sold in 2017, the CEO had been courting the company that acquired us for 6 years before we sold. So for 6 years, he was planting the seed over and over and over. Every time they got together at their conventions and meetings and stuff like that, we were both in the same space. And, we would constantly beat them in metrics that the carrier measured us on. And he wanted to know how are you getting those KPIs? What are you doing to get those numbers? And I don't know the exact verbiage, but I guarantee you it started something like, well, you're going to have to buy us if you want to find out.
Yeah. Write me a check and I'll share everything with you.
You get it all, right? It will just lay out.
Yeah, that's a strategy, right?
Yeah.
So there's, and I love it. Like a strategy like that is, knowing who your buyers are, knowing who your competition is. Could your competition be a buyer? Who are these other national, regional players that could be potential buyers for you? And to be honest, start networking with them. That I think that's probably one of the things that is most overlooked in today's era is the value of your network and reaching out to competitors.
Yeah.
When I was in the sleep medicine space, I called all my competitors and I would talk to them on a regular basis. And the thing is that, they're like, oh, I would never call my competitor, right? It's so easy to talk to them. You're in the same space. I would get on the phone with them and I'd say, hey, I saw that reimbursements were going down in the sleep medicine industry. Like, what are you doing about it? Right? We talk industry shop. We talk about the problems that are going on with our business. Hey man, funny story. I had my employee, they came in and did X, Y, and Z. You couldn't believe this, right? I couldn't even make this up, right? Business owners love talking about their business. They love talking about themselves. They love talking about what their company is doing. They love talking about how they're growing. And especially if you guys are competitors in different markets, I'd be calling markets that I wasn't even in. I'd call people in Florida. I'd call people in Colorado. I wasn't even in Colorado, right? At the time, I'd be calling people up there. Hey, I'm Andrew. I'm a CEO down here in Albuquerque. I run the sleep center. Hey, are you guys experiencing this? Where are you getting your sleep techs from? Are you training? Are you doing in-house? Are you sending them out? We would just network. I'd learn from them. Like I said, I was a student. Like I always wanted to try to learn. Hey man, that's great. You're using this vendor? Man, I'm getting ripped off. Can you send me a referral over to that person? Oh man, they would tell me, oh man, I'm getting raked over the coals with this billing company. Do you have anybody that you could send us to? I'd be like, yeah, man, I got this person. They're great. Right. And so we'd share a lot of resources. So, know who your buyers are, because that's going to help out when you go and meet with your M&A advisor or your business broker or whoever. If you can say, hey, I've already built a relationship with 6 people that could potentially be interested in my business. Because like you said, Eric, it's tough to sell a business. It's not easy.
Right. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I think just to kind of bring it all together, as I was, preparing for our conversation today, I came across your sun up to sunset illustration. I was wondering if you could maybe walk through that with our audience before we wrap up.
Sure. So that kind of illustration, what it kind of shows is just the full gamut of what we do. So we're really here to build relationships with people throughout the entire capital roadmap. So oftentimes businesses will come to us and they'll say, hey, I need to raise some capital. I need to do a Series A or I need to do a Series B. Well, those Series B companies will turn into Series D companies. And then afterwards, they may want to do a recapitalization that we talked about. And then they may want to get a second bite of the apple, right? All the while we're trying to strategize with them. So this isn't just a one and done in many cases when it comes to working with our clients. Depending on the stage of where they're at, oftentimes if they're early, we can work on multiple different transactions with them, or maybe we're finding some debt resources for them that they're needing for some growth capital. Maybe they're in a sticky situation and they need to get a turnaround, right? We'll bring in a turnaround guy. We'll that person can turn it around. And then maybe in the next 3 to 5 years, we sell that business to a private equity group and do a recapitalization then. So there's all kinds of different ways to skin the cat. And we just love working with people no matter where they're at. I had talked with a guy and he's like, Andrew, don't try to sell me anything. I'm not ready to sell my business until the next 5 years. And I'm like, man, that's fantastic. Like, you're my ideal client. Like, let's plan this out. Like, where do you want to be at? How do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Let's get a roadmap together. Do you need growth capital now? What are you trying to do? Are you going to have enough capital? Do you have a pro forma that you've put together? Do you need a financial plan? Do you need a financial model on how you're going to get there? Because you said you wanted to sell your business. I had a guy tell me specifically, he's all like, I want to have 25 locations. I want to sell for 25 million and I want to sell in 2025. I was all like, how'd you come up with that? Right. I was like, that's really cool that you know that and that's what you want. And so like, I was jacked up because I was like, all right, let's do this. Like, I like this guy because he's got numbers, right? It's like, because we can get there right now. All we got to do is work backwards. It's from where he's at now. I love that. So just tell me what you want and we'll figure out a plan to get there.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, can you tell us about your webinar, The Ultimate Guide to Selling Your Business?
Sure thing. So, I've had a pleasure talking with you guys. I hope that there's a lot of people that watch this podcast or listen to it. And if they want to continue the conversation, if they want to learn more about Now Capital, if they want to learn a little bit more about myself, we do a webinar. It's called The Ultimate Guide to Selling Your Business, the do's and don'ts of selling your company. And we go through in detail with specific examples of all the different pitfalls that are out there and specifically some of the secrets that are out there behind selling your business. So I do a webinar. The next one's going to be on September 14th. If you want to learn more about that webinar, you can follow me on LinkedIn. So find me on LinkedIn and connect with me there. I always put an event on LinkedIn where you can join that webinar. It's completely free. It's only, I believe it's an hour, right? So it's an hour on Thursdays and you get a lot of valuable information there. I've had a lot of great people come back to me and say, hey man, I never even thought about that. Like, I didn't even know that people were going to look at my sales team or my administration, but now I got a lot of things to think about. So they're not a client right now because they're not ready. They're kind of growing their business, but at least they're having the conversation. They're thinking about it because, like I said, that's the worst thing you can do is just not be prepared when you're getting ready to sell your business. So in this webinar, The Ultimate Guide to Selling Your Business, we kind of go through those things that you need to consider at a high level. I mean, we only have an hour, so we pack in a bunch of information, a lot of valuable information in an hour in our webinar series. So follow me on LinkedIn, go find me there, and you'll get an invite to it or you'll see it when it comes out.
Yeah, you definitely want to be ready when the guy with the bag full of money comes to buy your business, right?
Yeah, you take that deal, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And Andrew, we'll put a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes as well so people can find you really easily and also to connect with Now Capital Partners through your website. So anything else you want to share before we see what's new over at My Biz Coaches?
That's great. No, I think that's it, man. You guys did a fantastic job. I hope that somebody found some value out of this podcast, and there's somebody out there that's going to take it to the next level, that's going to go out there and do their first acquisition, that's going to call me and say, hey, I need an exit strategy. So even if this just changes one person's trajectory, it's worth it. So I hope there's someone out there that gets a lot of value out of this conversation that we've had today.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Andrew. We've appreciated it. Eric, I think you actually just finished up a webinar this week. So you want to talk about that and maybe anything else that's new over at My Biz Coaches?
Yeah, I appreciate that, David. So first of all, I gotta say, Andrew, if you have accomplished your objective because you have enticed me to have to look at my business model a little bit differently. And when you come out in September, we're going to have to touch base for certain. Now I'm going to have to buy you dinner and sit down and talk.
Okay,
but,
deal.
Absolutely. And I probably have a few clients that I need to have you talk to. So
excellent. Love to help.
I do have a quick question for you. Do you have a threshold that makes sense for your model? Is it $1 million in EBITDA or $500,000 or maybe a purchase price that they're considering? I don't.
Okay. I don't. If someone needs help, I mean, I was talking to somebody that was like, they had a business that was just doing $100,000 and they needed some help. Like, I'll talk to you. Like, okay. I don't want to disqualify anybody from getting expert advice. And if I can't help you personally, I'm going to make sure that you're going to find somebody that can in my referral network. So I don't want to, a lot of times M&A advisors, investment bankers will say, I only work with people that are $5 million in revenue. And it kind of makes the client feel bad that it's like, hey, I called this guy and I don't qualify to even talk to this guy. I'll talk to you. But I'll talk to anybody that wants to learn about this stuff. I have a real passion for it. I don't care if you're a small mom and pop and you're just trying to sell your coffee shop. I'll chat with you if you want to learn about some strategy. And if I can't help you myself personally, I'll make sure you can find someone that will help you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Appreciate that. And then David, thank you. I'll just quickly acknowledge, yes, we had it's relatively well received. It was really well received AI webinar yesterday. It was how to unleash AI on for sales and marketing in your business. So pretty excited to have the turnout that we did. That was a great job. And David, thank you, because a lot of that was your work. So I presented your work and I was happy to do so. So thank you. I'm really glad that you do my homework. But we lots of great interaction. We've had a really good feedback from that. We're excited to be able to branch into that area because I think that's a big component for business owners in the next 3 to 5 years. That's going to play a massive role in a lot of businesses that people are kind of taking for granted right now. I don't think that they really understand the potential that's going to play in the next 3 to 5 years. So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to be able to play a part in some of these businesses that are doing that. And then a little smaller announcement, still not the major one, but the next one
of these days, man.
Yeah, the new website is live.
That's right.
Yeah, super excited about that. We finally ongoing project, but with the help of my younger brother, who's our operations manager, he's helped us get that site live after 2 failed attempts with some freelance projects. Man, it just teaches you a lesson every time you do that, right? But so we got it live. It's mybizcoaches.co, and we'll be transitioning a few things here in the coming weeks, but pretty excited about that. And clients will actually be able to go to the site, see some of the different coaches that we actually have. We'll be able to review their profiles. We're still making updates to it, so it'll be rounded out a little bit more in the coming weeks. But excited to have it live, and there's an opportunity on there which Andrew can appreciate. You can take a survey that helps you understand how ready you are to sell your business.
Oh, wonderful!
So, and we have a few others that we'll be adding similar to that strategy, that vein. So, as we'll help clients understand and kind of point them in the right direction, we can guide them and maybe introduce you to Andrew.
Love to help out however I can.
Awesome. Yep. Well, great stuff, Andrew. Thank you again. You're very generous with your time and insights, and we appreciate it. So thank you once again.
You're welcome. Yeah, it was a pleasure being here. Great job, guys. I hope that this gets a lot of traction and helps out some people in any ways.
Awesome.
Absolutely. I think we're going to have you back at some point in the future, Andrew.
Love to be back.
So. I think so. Awesome. Yeah. And to our audience, we'll see you on the next episode of the Biz Coach Show. Thanks.